So, welcome to today's webinar, Who, What, Where, Why Workflows. So, everything about workflows and hot folders in GMG Colorproof. Who's speaking to you today? My name is Jessica. I'm responsible for the Academy here at GMG at the headquarters, so for the complete training stuff. I'm with GMG since 2008, so right after my studies, I started at GMG and I'm still here with some positions in technical development and application technology before ending up actually in the training section in the academy. Okay. So what we will see today, I will start with a very short introduction to workflows, just to get us all in line. And then actually I will straight switch into the software and give you an overview of all the settings and share some best practices tips with you. So we will talk about filter settings and workflows, the channel mapping rules, nesting settings, remote proofing, labels control strips, cleanup backup settings, and other settings as well. And in the end, we have the possibility, or you have the possibility, to ask some additional questions. Like I said, if they come to you during the webinar, just type them in the chat window and I will try to keep an eye on them. Okay, so let's start with the first very short introduction. Hot folders and workflows. So there can be different configurations. It can be one hot folder, so the folder where you put your files in, connected with one workflow, processing the file with a proof standard, label, etc. Or it can be one hot folder linked to many workflows, meaning, for instance, by using file name filtering, in the hot folder the decision is made which workflow, so for instance which proof standard, should be used for the file which dropped into the hot folder. Since Colorproof 5.6 we have several hot folder types. So we have a normal hot folder, as just mentioned above, and we have two new hot folder types additionally. One is the Smart Hot Folder. As you can see, it uses naming rules for the decision which proof standard is used for the file. The advantage here is that it reduces the number of workflows. So you only have one workflow for the usage with different proof standards instead of several workflows for each proof standard one. The other new hot folder type is the job ticket hot folder, and this hot folder uses a job ticket XML from a third-party RIP, and this job ticket defines all the job parameters or some job parameters for the Colorproof workflow. These two hot folder types need an additional license, and they are available since Colorproof 5.6. We are currently at version 5.7, just for your information. Okay. So let's start with our best practices and with our live tour. So I will switch to the software. Here's my Colorproof system. I have two printers set up randomly, and here on the Workflows tab is what we will be talking about today. You see, I already set up some hot folders, some workflows, doesn't matter. I would like to start to talk about the settings in a normal hot folder, normal workflow, and afterwards I will show you what the difference is in a smart hot folder or a job ticket hot folder. Okay, so I will just set up a new hot folder. Give it a name. define the input folder. And here you see hot folder type, the drop-down menu, normal hot folder, job ticket hot folder, or smart hot folder. Of course, if you don't have the license on your dongle, you will not see these options. So let's start with a normal hot folder. Here in the workflow order, you can define when several workflows are linked to your hot folder, you can define the priority of the different workflows, and of course, clean up backup settings as recommended by us. So we recommend to clean up unrecognized files, maybe after 300 minutes. And if you don't want to delete them, you can say back them up, so they will be moved into this folder, and then you are on the safe side because nothing will be deleted. But you have to make sure that you manually delete at some point afterward, otherwise your hard disk will have a data overflow at some point. Okay, so I have my hot folder. Now I will connect a workflow. Again, give it a name, my workflow. Here you have the option to say if you accidentally linked to another to the wrong hot folder, you can select actually all hot folders which are set up in your system. Okay, so let's start with the filter settings. Very nice about the filter settings is you can export and import them. So if your colleague is using another color-proof system and you want to use the same filter settings, you don't have to explain to him what he should set up. You can just export the settings to him. Okay, so we can filter for the embedded ICC profile for image files or the output intent for PDF files. So when I click on the plus button here, I just select the ICC profile. And now my workflow will filter or will only process files which have the output intent ISO-coded version 2, so for GRAD39. The next possibility is to use a name filter, either to say include or ignore means. Include file name filter, okay, all the files which contain 39 will be processed. Or you say ignore all files which contain 48, or maybe all files which contain _test. These files will now not be processed in our workflow, even though they are in our hot folder. Next thing is we can filter for color spaces, RGB files, CMYK files, including spot colors or spot color files only. The filtering for color depth is pretty interesting, since it depends if you want to proof Contown or dot proof / flexoproof. For dot proof flexoproof, you will be using 1-bit files, so the pre-separated 1-bit files, and for Contown proofing, you will be using 8-bit or 16-bit images only. So if a 1-bit file accidentally now drops into my hot folder, it will not be processed. Okay, additionally, you can filter for the file format if you want to process image files or PDFs or PDFs only. For instance, here these RIP server, LAN files, PressTag, these are all 1-bit files, so pre-separated 1-bit data for dot-proof or flexoproof. And these are just different vendors of RIPs, and the files sometimes have slightly different formats. Okay, additionally, you can filter for PDFX compliance. So you can say, okay, only process PDFX compliant files, otherwise don't process in my workflow. Good. Next point, merge files. This is only important for 1-bit files, so again, .proof, flexoproof. A lot of patterns, so RIP patterns, are linked here or are already stored in colorproof. This just means that depending on the RIP you are using, your 1-bit data has different naming convention or gives different metadata with the information about the screen ruling and the screen width, for instance, or which separation you now have. So for the mainly used RIP vendors, we already integrated the patterns in colorproof, so Harlequin, ESCO, whatever. If your pattern or if your RIP pattern is not listed here, you can add it yourself, again by the plus button. Add pattern recognition, you enter a name for it, and you just load 1-bit files. And after you loaded these 1-bit files, you will be guided through, and you can give colorproof some instructions how to interpret these files. For instance, regarding the naming convention, saying, okay, every file which ends with underscore capital C means we have the cyan separation, or of course other things your RIP does. Okay. Additionally, screen detection. Usually colorproof can detect screen ruling and screen angle automatically by just analyzing the file. If you know in this workflow you only process one type of 1-bit data with always the same screen ruling and angle, you can set it up here custom manually, and by this it saves you some time, because when the file comes in, colorproof does not have to analyze the file. It just takes these settings you set up here for granted and applies them to the file. So little time saver here. Okay, next one, color management. So we select our proof standard here in the drop-down we want to use. You see a proof standard here with a little icon. This is an open color proof standard. So when you have open color and you have your open color linked to your color proof, the open color projects, of course, are available for workflows as well. Depending which proof modes are supported, you can choose contour proof or dot proof in this drop-down here. And the next important part is conversion contour and conversion line work, so for vector data here. These two tabs actually are for normalizing your file. So when you receive a PDF containing RGB images, for instance, you can define to normalize to CMYK, but this normalizing here is an ICC normalizing. So no MX-GMG technology, basic ICC calculation like it is in Photoshop, for instance. So you can define to take RGB always as a defined profile or use the embedded profile if it's available. If it's not available, please assume it's Adobe RGB, for instance. And then all RGB images will be normalized to the output intent. In my case now Graqual 2013, because I said my proof standard is Graqual 2013. If I don't set this up and I receive RGB files, they will not be processed because I'm assuming I'm receiving CMYK files. For conversion line work, you have the possibility to normalize vector data different than images, but same procedure. And the next very important part is channel mapping, so mapping your spot colors. So I will activate it, and when we have a look at the drop down here, you see we already have a rule, and in this channel mapping rule set it says, okay, when a color comes in named orange, please replace it with magenta. And now let's just edit this rule set. So you see you can set up several channel mapping rule sets, and let's just add some more rules. So for instance, for spot colors, sometimes in the layouting, every layouter uses a different spelling of a spot color. So maybe some just say P123, and you can say replace with, oops, Pantone 123, for instance, and then say okay, and Pantone 123 should be replaced with this particular color. And by this naming, ColorProof will recognize the color in the spot color database. Additionally, for instance, for a dye line, you could say, okay, do not print, or for a mask channel or something. This is all you can do with the channel mapping rules. These rule sets, once they are stored, are available for workflows and for manual jobs as well. Okay. Something I want to show you as well. These rule sets can be exported and imported. So again, you can just exchange with your colleague or with the subsidiary or whatever. Okay. Next one, printer tab. So here you see all printers which are actually set up in ColorProof, and when both of them are active, they are available for load balancing, meaning as long as in both printers there's CMIMA 250 in this case and they are calibrated, if the 7900 is busy printing or has an error, has paper out, whatever, my jobs will be printed on the Epson 4900, for instance, or on any other printer I have set up and configured here for load balancing. Something very, very helpful is this message area down here. So depending on the settings, you get a red exclamation mark, meaning, okay, there's something wrong. You see, I cannot click OK. So something in my configuration is completely wrong and will be preventing my workflow from processing a file. If you have an orange check mark, this is just a warning, meaning, okay, the job still can print, but maybe there's something you should check. When you click on this exclamation mark, you see all errors, warnings, and information. So all messages ColorProof wants to tell you are described then here. So, for instance, now it says load balancing to Epson 4900 is not possible because the embedded measuring device does not support the measurement condition M1 required by the proof standard. My proof standard is Greg-Hall 2013. This is for verification defined as M1. And in my 4900, I only have an ILS 20, so the old Epson embedded device, and this is not capable of measuring M1. So for now, I will just deactivate the 4900. Okay, additionally, you can set up remote proofing. So with this workflow, you will now create a job which will be sent to your remote site, so a subsidiary on the other side of the world or whatever. The remote site can be set up here, and the connection for remote proofing works via FTP server or via network. Completely automated once all is set up. And then on the receiver side, the job will come in and either directly print or they will have to start it manually. Next important part, the nesting. Very interesting topic. Let's have a look at the different nesting strategies or possibilities. So one possibility is the automatic nesting, meaning horizontally and vertically, incoming jobs will be nested. And so you define either the maximum job age or how many % of your role media will be used, or how many millimeters of your role will be used with the jobs until the job prints. Here you find a short description as well. You can define whether your images should be rotated or not. So always portrait, always landscape, or automatic to have a best match. The next the other strategy is single line nesting. Here is the difference that it just nests over the role width or the media width. You see, so the default is if 80% of the paper width are filled with my jobs, the job will print. I prefer this setting over the automatic nesting, but for sure it depends on how you like to work actually. Additionally, you can define if job labels, job control strips should be used per nesting template. And the last option is print single image per job. I think it is clear. So one job, one image, and it will be printed. One very useful tip here, if you store a nesting template, the template can be used in every workflow. But this then even means that files from several workflows may nest together as well, as long as they are using the same nesting template, since, yeah, totally makes sense. If you want to avoid this, you can just duplicate an existing nesting template. For instance, if you don't want to mix the Coke files with the Pepsi files, for instance, you just duplicate the template and say, okay, my template Coke, and the other one is my template Pepsi then. And then link them to the different workflows. And then the files from this workflow will not nest together anymore. Okay. Print settings, you have your calibration. You can activate or deactivate the paper tint simulation. When you deactivate the paper tint simulation, just keep in mind that it may be that you fail your media wedge verification, your control strip. If you have a heavy paper tint simulation, this may be the case. And you can activate or deactivate your spot colors here, like you have it in a manual job. RIP settings, this is interesting when you're not using your own bit data, 1-bit data, I'm sorry, for dot proof, but you want to RIP the PDFs directly in color proof. This will then use the GMG predefined screen sets. Image processing. Here you can define what happens if an image coming in through your hot folder is larger than the media size loaded in printer. Rotate or scale or crop or whatever. Or you define to generally scale. So this here at the top is only happening when the image does not fit on the media, and here at the bottom you can define to always scale your incoming files. Mirror, invert the channels, define to use a PDF box, whatever. Down here we define the image label. So for the image label, I personally like to use, instead of bottom, the long edge, say 2 rows, and to decrease the font size. So when we click on font, I set the size to 6 point maybe, and then I'm sure that all the information I want to have can be displayed on my label. You can add a comment in the window down here. This is pretty useful. And with this little pen icon, you can set up your own label setting, your own label default, and you can edit the predefined label settings. So you can define which information you want to have on your label. You can define the control strips, the image control strips you want to have on your file. So for instance, one control strip for the I1 and one control strip for the embedded measuring device. On image marks, there's a pretty useful settings, the paper tint area. So when you increase the outer paper tint area by, for instance, 10 millimeters or something, it adds paper tint simulation outside of your file and outside of your media wedge, of your control strip. And this makes it easier to crop your proof, since it always makes sense to crop a proof when you have a paper tint simulation, to not have the paper white of the proofing media itself next to your proof, because this influences the color appearance of your proof actually. Additionally, again, cleanup backup. So processed input files should be deleted, so they should not remain in the input folder. Maybe it makes sense to say, okay, move them to a backup folder, but then delete them after 24 hours or maybe 48 hours. So when something goes wrong, you still have the chance to check the input file, but after the time you define, the files will be deleted. Okay, so we have our hot folder and our workflow now. Additionally, what I wanted to show you is the Smart Hot folder. So I will just set up another hot folder, say, okay, Smart Hot folder. Here's my input. Change the hot folder type to Smart, and now you see we can set up the Smart Hot folder rule set. There's already one predefined. Let's have a look. Edit. Okay, this is my rule set for the Smart Hot folder. So I can define if it should search within the setup proof standards or within custom profiles. And then you can define, okay, every file which comes into this hot folder which ends with 39L should be processed with a proof standard that contains ISO-coated. Then when a file comes in which contains GRACOL, it should be processed with a proof standard containing GRACOL 2006. You can add several other naming conventions, begins with, ends with, or contains. So maybe begins with 48, whatever. Use the condition which contains 48, for instance. Down here you have the possibility to test this rule set with an image which already has this naming conventions. if the correct proof standard is used. The advantage is now the proof standard is not defined in the workflow anymore. It's defined by this rule set. So in the past, you had one hot folder and then now 3 workflows connected, even though the only difference is the proof standard you want to use for your file. And with the Smart Hot folder, you have one hot folder and only one workflow linked to it. And the proof standard will be selected depending on the naming convention. Okay. So this is my hot folder, and now I enter or I add a workflow. And the difference here is on the tab Color Management, you see it says Fallback Proof Standard. So if there's a file where the settings from our rule set not really apply, here we have this Fallback Proof Standard, which will then be used. Okay, so for a job ticket hot folder, settings like proof standard, scaling, channel mapping, etc. can all be defined by the job ticket XML. On our support homepage in the knowledge base, I want to quickly show you, we have so this is our support homepage. If you don't already have an access, you can request it through our website. So knowledge base, color proof, we have more information about the job ticket integration, meaning we have a documentation explaining all the XML tags color proof is able to understand from a job ticket XML. And then actually your workflow administrator just has to set up the job ticket, which will be exported together with the file for dropping into the colorproof hot folder. Okay, so I will hurry up. Just 2 more things I want to explain you. I'm a little bit over the time. I hope that's okay. Pretty useful is this filtering setting here. So when I type in Graqual, for instance, it filters just for all workflows hot folder which are using something connected to Graqual, for instance. Next, we have these new pause buttons. Since I think this one came in Colorproof 5.6 and this one came in Colorproof 5.7. So, pause, resume all hot folders and workflows. I like to call it the panic button. So when you see something is going completely wrong and you don't want to search for the correct workflow in the list, you can just hit this button and all workflows will stop processing. Files which are already printing, of course, will not be stopped. They will be finished. But new incoming files, they will not be processed. They will be on hold, actually. The other pause button here is for Proof Control Inline. And often it is the case that usually you're verifying your proofs with the embedded measuring device, so with Proof Control Inline. But when you have to hurry, it may be faster to switch to I1 verification. And this is what this button actually does. So in every workflow where an embedded or a control strip for an embedded measuring device is defined, this control strip will be switched to the I1 layout and the jobs will print with the I1 media wedge instead. So you can get out your proofs and then you click this button again and then you will have Proof Control Inline again instead of the I1 control strip. Okay. So this is actually all I wanted to show you for today in the software. So if there are any questions, just feel free to ask. So maybe while you're thinking what you can ask additionally, I'm not sure if you already know our Academy website. Here we inform about webinars. Actually, we do webinars every month regarding different topics. And we also offer trainings here at the Academy. So here in Tübingen, or we can come to you for training. So I just want to quickly show you, this is our website containing a link to the webinars. And if you missed a webinar, we have our library where you find all the webinars which are available. Additionally, we have a very nice brochure where you can see which trainings are scheduled here at the Academy. Okay, I see we have a question. Okay, how can you export all your workflows and hot folders? So let me just quickly jump back to the software. You don't want to, okay, now I see. You don't want to export a single hot folder or workflow. You want to export all in one, if I understand it right. Actually, when I've just marked my hot folder here at the top, hold the Shift key and marked all my other hot folders as well. And now when I say export hot folder, it should export actually all my hot folders. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. You see? So just by holding the Shift key, and you have to manually select them, but by holding the Shift key, this works. Okay? Does this answer your question, hopefully? Okay. So, next question. Are these hot folders exported together with the workflows? Yes, they are. They contain the workflows they are linked to. Of course, something important when importing hot folders and workflows. Depending on the settings you make, it may be that you have to give the profiles to your receiving side as well. This is just something you have to keep in mind. But Colorproof tells you when you import your hot folder or your workflow. Okay. There will be another question, so I will just wait until you finished to write it down. Maybe there's something. Yeah, there's something else I can tell you while I'm just waiting. To add a job label or a job control strip to jobs which are processed through a hot folder or a workflow, this is a new functionality as well. And you see, depending on the printer you select, you can set up, I would set it on hold, you can set up if you want to add a job label. And you saw in the nesting template, you can activate whether you want to use a job label and job control strip as well. Okay. Okay, so the next question. When defining in a workflow printing jobs with, for instance, 100 LPI, can other jobs with 133 LPI, for instance, be converted into the different screening? Actually not. The only thing Colorproof can do is convert a PDF or rip a PDF into one-bit file, but a file which has already been ripped with a particular screen ruling, we cannot change or like re-rip or something to another screen ruling. This is something Colorproof cannot do. Okay. So I hope I gave you some good and useful tips for your work with workflows. So thank you very much for your attention and of course for the questions. This is what we're here for. And yeah, like I said, you received the follow-up email with all the information and I hope to hear you again one time. Okay, thank you very much.